So it's been brought to my attention that Bobby Belt and Bryan Broaddus each believe that Phil Mafah is not going to make this 53-man roster. That's what they're told. That's what they're being told. Okay, they're reporting that, and that's what they are having discussions with people who are plugged in to the organization, and that is what they are saying. Apparently, it's a shoulder injury, which, if you're familiar with Phil Mafah's his recent history, at least his draft eligible season in college, or his last season at Clemson, that's what hindered him, withheld him from being the best total version of himself. Is there some sort of a degenerative issue? Is it even the same shoulder? I don't know those details yet. We'll find those out soon. But if we understand, or if let's just say we agree based on who is reporting this, Bryan Broaddus and Bobby Belt, very, very, very plugged in individuals, very, very knowledgeable individuals. They are saying that Phil Mafah is not going to make this 53-man roster. I have been saying for more than just 1 year that Deuce Vaughn belongs in this league and deserves to be evaluated after he gets his real shot with an offensive staff that has a real identity, a real plan, a nuanced attack in the ground game. I have also recently said that I don't believe Miles Sanders is going to make this team. I thought all along that it was going to be one of the two, all along meaning immediately after April's draft this year when the Cowboys selected 2 rookie running backs. Okay, so you have 2 veterans, 2 rookies, Deuce Vaughn, and Hunter Lipke. In my head, I evaluated that particular situation as, okay, only one of those veterans is going to make this roster. They're expendable. One of them's making $3 million and change. The other one's making $1 million and change. The $1 million and change guy, Miles Sanders, is 28 years old. He brings something to the table. But what he does not do, at least the practices that I watched in Frisco and in Oxnard, not participating on special teams. So I began immediately thinking to myself, interesting. I had those discussions with Law Nation last Tuesday. I had those discussions with Lou Takes, with Boss Cowboy, Boss Show Me. And then I had the same exact conversation on Cowboys Collective. And what I said on Cowboys Collective that I believe is that Deuce Vaughn is one of the top 2 ball carriers on your roster. I questioned that. I believe it, but I questioned it. I was like, I wonder, is this true? So if we assume that what Bryan Broaddus, the information that Bryan Broaddus and Bobby Belt are relaying to us based on somebody within the organization in the know telling them about Phil Mafah, let's assume that's true. And let's assume that my thoughts and opinions on Miles Sanders are that only one of these veterans is going to make it. 28 years old, $1 million and change, definitely not expendable. Hasn't really shown us anything outside of the first couple weeks of camp, but he's been banged up. He's not clear head and shoulders, knees and toes away, separating himself from guys that we are questioning, like rookies, Phil Mafah, other veteran, Javonte Williams, Deuce Vaughn. Okay, so he's also not participating on special teams. So he's clearly, to me, not one of the 2 best ball carriers on the roster. He's not participating on special teams. He's only making $1 million, and he's by far the oldest running back in the room. That makes Miles Sanders expendable. And that makes him, for me, off of this 53-man roster. You guys don't have to believe me on that. You don't have to agree with me on that. But here's another piece of supportive contextual evidence that I'm going to discuss here and bring to the table. Did you notice that Deuce Vaughn was the first man out there in preseason game number 3. Did you notice that Deuce Vaughn was highly effective? Because they did add a little bit more nuance to you saw some pin pull, you saw some counter. It wasn't just inside zone vanilla. It was just a sprinkle of what we know we're going to get from Clayton Adams. But did you notice? 42. 4'2", and not 4'2", 5'5", but belong in this league, and I believe on this roster guy, Deuce Vaughn. Did you notice him in pass protection? Where most people believe that he's not capable because he's too small. Looked, competently capable to me, comparably capable to me. If one is not head and shoulders over the other as a talent, as a ball carrier, then you must bring something else to the table. Special teams. And yes, you guys are probably all sitting there thinking, maybe some of you have been waiting and itching and, stressing you out that I haven't mentioned this yet. Deuce Vaughn isn't really a special teams guy either, unless God forbid something happens to Cavante Turpin. You still have a level of explosivity in that department, okay? If all things are equal, or even if Deuce Vaughn is just a little bit below Miles Sanders from a talent and ball carrier perspective. I'm just saying hypothetically. I don't believe that, but I'm saying hypothetically. If this coaching staff believes that, would they not favor the guy who is a break glass in case of emergency scenario return man for Cavante Turpin over Miles Sanders? Would they not favor the guy who still has 2 more years of contractual control this year and next year, right? 2 years left on his rookie deal. Would they not favor the guy who's 4 or 5 years younger? Would they not favor the guy? And here's a kicker that a lot of people, I don't hear a lot of people discuss, and I feel like I get a lot of pushback when I say this, but rare traits from Deuce Vaughn: the short area quickness, the stature. Both of those things, they kind of go hand in hand. His stature allows for the rare short area quickness, but the short area quickness, the suddenness, is that they are rare. And when you have a rare trait, like Jadon Blue is another one, a rare trait of explosivity, home run ability, you protect that asset. So we discussed and we teased the IR, the loophole, right? Hey, Deuce, your ankle bothering you a little bit there, Bubba? Phil, how's your shoulder? If he actually has a medical situation, which maybe this is, I want to pose this as a potential, not a conspiracy theory, but here's where my head goes, right? The league is trying to crack down a little bit more on preventing these front offices from, leveraging loopholes and faking injuries to get these guys onto their IR so that they don't have to subject them to waivers. What if that's exactly what's happening here with Phil Mafah? But the Cowboys are saying it's a shoulder injury, even despite him looking incredible, literally jumping off the screen in the preseason, game number 3. Phil's got a rare trait too, by the way. Let me just say that. I've mentioned this a few times. I don't know exactly when or where, but it's been pretty relatively recently in numerous occasions. Phil Mafah is one of the top 5 biggest running backs in the league right now. I could only find I didn't scan the entire league, but I got to 5 names. It was Najee Harris. It was Braylon Allen. It was obviously Derrick Henry. It was Omarion Hampton now is going to challenge that, the 6'2", 235. I don't know if Hampton is 235. I don't think he's quite that big, but he's close. And then the only other guy with the exact, he was actually identical, 6'2", 235, which if you understand, the irony of where he came from, Clayton Adams, then the James Conner thing, that's going to fit, right? Very clear, recent success story with a body type, a skill set comparable to that of James Conner, right? Which is absolutely Phil Mafah. But here's the thing: you can designate to return 8 guys on any calendar year. So you IR them, 8 guys you can designate to return, but they got to miss 4 weeks. So is that potential situation here with Phil Mafah? I don't know. Just want to put some closing thoughts here on this situation, right? I find it interesting, and I just can't overlook the fact that Miles Sanders is a little bit older, the fact that while he does have proven production in this league, Deuce Vaughn doesn't. Deuce was on full display for the world to see, out there running with the first, not the ones, but the first offense that jogged out there in preseason game number 3. So either the Cowboys are trying to do him a favor, showcase him, put more on film so that he can instantly become a sought-after free agent and get scooped up off waivers somewhere else. Or they see Deuce where most of or I don't want to say most, because I know he is a polarizing player. It seems to be closer to 50-50 now. It felt like when I first started banging Deuce's drum, I was in the 10% minority. But I feel like it's starting to kind of teeter, and at least towards the middle, right? Were they doing him a favor? Because if they were just trying to do right by Deuce, Deuce damn sure did right by himself. And did he ever show up? A little bit of everything out there. I don't think he had a reception, but everything else, man. Vision, suddenness, elite short area quickness, packing a punch with a low center of gravity. Not just stepping up and picking up a block from the A gap. I'm talking across the entire formation. He split left to Joe Milton's left, and he steps up to the opposite C gap and picks up a block. Punishing would-be tacklers, even out of bounds, not shying away from contact, making them feel him. If we trust my evaluation and my personal judgment on Miles Sanders, and then of course we obviously parlay that with trusting Bryan, Broaddus, and Bobby Belt with their specific evals as well from them, but also to what they're being told, right? They're more plugged in than I am. That's just the reality. It is what it is. And they deserve to be. They do great work. But if those two things are true, then is Deuce Vaughn not a lock? And are we not excited about that? A brand new offensive identity, team-wide really, but just for the sake of this argument here. But also, and more importantly, in my opinion, a brand new run game philosophy and scheme. Pin pull, counter, power run game. When you force defenders, would-be tacklers, to try to have to stack and shed the interior 3 offensive linemen of the Cowboys that I believe is going to contend or have a case by the end of this season for the most physically dominant interior offensive line group, health permitting, in the entire National Football League. When you have to stack that 6'5", 335 people movers across the board on the interior, and then also try and figure out where the heck Deuce Vaughn is at with a plan. Connor Riley is in Deuce's camp. He's in his corner. Connor Riley has an exact formula for what works for Deuce Vaughn for their time together at Kansas State. Deuce Vaughn, all of these things, I feel like I'm probably belaboring the point just a little bit. And if I am, then I sincerely apologize for that. Y'all know I have a tendency to be long-winded, but I appreciate your attention. Any minute that I can get of yours is valued tremendously by me. It means a lot. Okay. The last thing I'll say is the vested veteran status that Miles Sanders has, and I don't put a ton of stock into this because, yes, in theory, the Cowboys could, like I believe they're going to do with Will Grier, cut Miles Sanders, and he could choose to re-sign with them and be placed immediately on their practice squad without being subject to waivers. I understand that. Okay, but the same cannot be said for Deuce Vaughn. You can't protect him from being poached. He will be subject to waivers because he's still on his rookie contract. So in layman's terms, more so, you cut Deuce Vaughn, you're probably kissing him goodbye. If you cut Miles Sanders, you at least may have the ability to still negotiate a little bit and see if you can get him back. But once again, that's a guy who believes that he belongs in this league. And I believe that he showed a little bit of that. He's clearly got some juice left. There was a time when most people would have suggested to you that he looks to be the clear-cut, most, say, explosive back in the backfield. Okay? He's probably got a spot in this league too. And I guarantee you he's gonna, he wants to, he believes that he has the ability to still be a top 2 or 3 ball carrier on somebody's roster in this league. And I think he's right. But if you consider, which we all know, that Javonte Williams is a lock, if we understand that Jadon Blue is probably the safest running back in the room, one of the safest players on the roster, right? Because his home run ability is that rare. One of the few traits let's just say Deuce Vaughn's that is one of the few traits from any player that you're gonna just instantaneously say, yeah, that's more rare than Deuce Vaughn's suddenness. Okay, so he's obviously safe. But Phil Mafah, could he be protected? One of those IR guys that you designate to return. One of the 8 that you get. Is the Cowboys listing him with a shoulder situation, or Bryan Broaddus hinting at that? Is that them protecting themselves, saying, hey, look, we have a recent history. We can point to medical evaluation. All he has to do is say that it hurts. And we're good. You're covered. Probably digging a little bit too deep there. That's what we do on the Sports Below the Surface Lando Show platform. Just thinking out loud here. My opinion is not gospel, but it is, as I always try to be, and to make sure for y'all that it is well informed, always objective, and created in the most creative way that I possibly can, so that you guys can consume it, process it, and analyze it to the best of your ability. Okay? I think with this one, the guys that I wanted to discuss, I've already discussed. Like the ones that I had probably the most passionate opinions on. Will Grier was another one. That quarterback conversation, maybe we can still have that after tomorrow unfolds, but I don't believe the Cowboys keep 3 quarterbacks. Will Grier, another one of those vested veteran guys, comfortable here, has a great relationship with Shoddy and everybody in that quarterback room. You cut him, you negotiate to get him back on the practice squad, you elevate him in need, or in case of emergency, right? There's a couple other guys probably, but I've talked about Zion Childress on this platform. I've talked about James Houston on this platform. I've discussed Mozzie Smith on this platform. And as of earlier today, who was it that we just talked about? Trayshawn Holden. Okay, now this makes the 5th, Deuce Vaughn or Miles Sanders. Which one are you taking? Because Javonte's a lock, Jadon Blue's a lock, Hunter Lipke's a lock. That leaves room for one more guy. If we know or assume that what Broaddus and Bobby are telling us, and we also trust my opinion on the Miles Sanders situation, who hasn't been repping special teams, then is Deuce Vaughn not a lock? All right, don't forget, a lot more of this coming, okay, on this platform. Recording the first Texas-specific YouTube video here momentarily after this one gets finished. And I would really appreciate it if you guys, if you're Texas fans, you want to let's just say right now, starting with this week's matchup against Ohio State, the rematch from a college football semifinal playoff game from a year ago, I'm going to give you guys the keys. In its most simplistic form, the easiest way to not overanalyze this stuff. Okay, I've got a few different keys to this ball game that I really do believe will make or break this matchup for Texas. If you want to know more about that stuff, this is the place to be. But as always, working some things that have to shake out behind the scenes, but in close tandem with Inside Texas, the number one all-encompassing resource for Texas sports, but especially Texas football. That's the place to be. But this right here, the sports below the surface, the truth for the true fan. I'm going to try to make things even the most important things that you need to know. That's where you come here. That's what you come here for. Inside Texas, the Lando Show. We're going to make some noise this year, and the horns are too. Okay, remember, prayer changes things, and the war's already won.